Well, good morning and welcome to another specimen series. And this morning you join me on one of my favourite rivers to target barbel, and that's the River Severn. And why do I come to the River Severn? Well, quite simply because it's such a stunning place to fish for barbel. The barbel don't grow as big in here as they do such the bigger rivers like the Trent, but the scenery more than makes up for the size of the barbel. The river is absolutely stunning. It's surrounded by rolling hills as it flows through the valley, and for me sometimes, as much as I like catching big fish, it's smelling the roses along the way, and that's exactly why I've come here. So I got here early this morning and I've travelled with the minimum of kit because I think it's quite important to keep really mobile. I haven't got a mount and a bait either. I'm going to keep everything minimalistic and I'm going to drop in all the likely looking barbel swims. So this first swim I've dropped in looks absolutely perfect. It ticks all the boxes for a barbel, so I'll probably give it 20 minutes, half an hour and see if we can get one of those tips to pull round. Well, I have had both these rods just slightly downriver in this swim, in this nice glide at the back of the swim, but the main part of the flow is coming around this dead tree in front of me. So I'm going to move this one. I'm going to try and see if I can hold in that main flow. And the way I like to fish on the Severn is to use a straight lead and a big lump of luncheon meat and just explore each swim. So let's see if we can get a bite. Just put it the other side of that fast flow. Still like to feel the lead down to make sure it's nice and clear. Fingers crossed it holds, and fingers crossed we get a bite. Well, the rod that I just moved into the main body of the flow, I've just had a real big thump and a drop back, and I'm not sure if it's a small barbel or a chub. It's not pulling very hard, so I'm thinking chub. Let's find out. Oh, it's the smallest barbel in the world. It is a barbel, but it's a very small one, but it's a bite. That's the main thing. Well, my word, I said that the barbel weren't that big in the River Severn, but that's probably the smallest barbel I've ever caught from this river. But the main thing is it's the first bite, which is always the hardest bite to get. Well, I've just unhooked this little fella in the net, and this is definitely the smallest barbel I've ever caught from this river. He's a lively little fella and he's had a lucky escape. He's got a tooth mark from something on his back, but that does build my confidence. I know it's tiny, but it's a bite and it's a barbel, so hopefully if he's feeding, his grandma will be feeding. There's just that one very small barbel in this swim, and there's so many great swims to explore, so I'm not going to sit in a swim too long if I don't get many bites. So when I have both the rods in, I'm going to go a couple of 100 yards down because there's another really nice looking swim down there. That'll be fine. Well, this certainly isn't a 1 pound barbel. I've had my first bite in the second swim. They really do fight hard. If you haven't fished for barbel on this river before, you'd be mistaken for thinking you've got a huge one on, but I can't imagine it'll be massive, but it's got me back winding, so that's a good sign. It doesn't feel enormous. The bigger ones do have a lot more weight to them. They tend to hang deep. This one's quite head shaky, but certainly going to be bigger than the first one. Well, he was definitely punching above his weight, this little fella. In that strong flow, he was fighting really hard, and like I say, not a massive barbel, but with a backdrop like this, I don't really mind. So I'm going to slip this fella back because I'm sure we're going to get some more bites, and hopefully we'll get one or two a little bit bigger than this one. The third move of the day, and hopefully this will bring a few bites, fingers crossed. Really sharp. Nice. Well, that proves the importance of moving swims. I haven't even got the second rod out. This is my 5th swim of the day. I might seem like I'm being a little bit impatient, keep moving swims, but I'm just fishing a straight lead and a really attractive lump of luncheon meat. And I feel if the fish are in the swim, the bite comes really quick, exactly like this. We've got me lump of luncheon meat hanging out his gob. Yay! Well, with that barbel safely in the net, I'm going to get this rod straight back out because it's obviously quite a good swim, and it's quite a good idea to rest the fish in the net when you do get them. They fight so hard. You just cast this out. He can just get his strength back, and then we'll have a quick look at him. Well, I think me and Chris deserved that one. That rod had only been out about 1 minute in this new swim, but to be honest, there had to be barbel in this swim. There's a real shallow riffle, then it drops off on this lovely big crease, and that's exactly where this one picked up that lump of luncheon meat, and I'm hoping that that won't be the only one in this swim. Well, it's finally stopped raining and I couldn't resist. We're now making our way back down the river towards where the car's parked, and I've dropped back in the very first swim that I fished this morning. I caught that tiny little barbel in here this morning, but it really looks the part, and I refuse to believe there wasn't more barbel in here. And well, the rod had been out about 5 minutes and the tip slammed round and I've caught another one. So I'm really glad I dropped back in here. And it's worth noting, if you see a swim that looks really good for a barbel and you don't catch in it, don't be scared to drop back in there later in the day. So I'll give it another 15-20 minutes in here. If I don't get another fish, there's several more swims that way that I want to try. But before I move, I'm going to take a few moments to talk you through the hardware and the rigs that I'm using. So it's probably the simplest form of barbel fishing that I do. I've got some 2-pound test curve Advanta rods with some 6,000 size Shimano bait runners fully loaded with a 10-pound line. Well, the rig itself is super simple. It's a simple running rig. I've got a run ring, a buffer bead, attached to a swivel, and then about 4 foot of 10-pound line. And on the under there is a size 8 hook with a hair rig, big attractive lump of luncheon meat. I think the most important thing is going in the right swims and putting in the right part of the swim. I'm not feeding any free offerings today, I'm just using highly attractive hook baits and keeping on my toes. Well, I'm just about to reposition this left-hand rod, but before I do that, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I look for a good barbel swim. Now, we'll all have our own opinions, but for me, especially with the river being slightly low still, I want a swim that's got some life in it. And what I mean by that is some fast flow. So the swim I'm in right now is perfect. I've got a fallen tree upriver, and the flow is coming round that really fast and causing a nice crease behind it, and it's that crease that I'm fishing. So the creases are really good, and then when there's a change of flow and you get a nice steady glide, perhaps a riffle, if you can see some turbulence in the water and a little bit of depth, they're spot on in my opinion. Well, good morning. You find me back down the river this morning for a proper last chance saloon. Nothing else happened yesterday. I did fish 2 more swims closer to the van, but no more bites. So a slight change of plan today. I caught a few fish near this sunken tree on the other bank yesterday, but we've come on this side and I'm going to give them some bait today. I have just put the rod out on a cube of meat for a little while, and the other rod is on a little 10mm Pacific tuna boilie with a feeder with some dampened pellet and some hemp. And I've got a bucket of that hemp and pellet mixed up, and I have got my bait dropper rod. So I'm going to fish a much smaller area of the river today, but I'm going to try and build a swim with the bait dropper and recasting those feeders. Well, I'm always really confident in the single cube of meat, and the one that I've just cast on the end of that fast flow, the single lump of luncheon meat has screamed off. So I was then starting to put a bit of bait out with the bait dropper, but maybe I don't need to. Yeah, this is a better one, mate. Like a carp. This is the exact reason you need a fairly beefy rod for these rivers. When you hook a half decent fish in this flow, they really do hang on, and this one feels much better. It's just none of those little rattly head shakes. It's actually got my knees knocking a little bit, this one, so fingers crossed. Well, fingers crossed we get it in, and fingers crossed it is a bigger one. That's a double, mate. I think it's a double. Yay! I don't want to celebrate too prematurely, but get a welly full for this if we have to. Oh, never been so happy to see a decent barbel. That's much more like it. He's double all day long, I think. He's got a real set of big rubbery lips. This one, he looks like one of those Spanish Cosimo barbel. Well, I'm proper chuffed with that. A double figure fish off the River Severn in my world is a big fish, so I'll probably call that about 10-pound 4. Over the moon with that. Well, I'm absolutely over the moon with that. Although I had a really nice day yesterday, I'd be lying if I didn't say it was challenging. Me and Chris walked miles yesterday. We managed to catch a few fish, but I did feel a little bit shortchanged on the size of them. So we've made the call to come back down here this morning. We've got some really rough weather coming in at lunchtime, so we only had a couple of hours to fish. So for this lovely fella to come along, well, that's a real bonus. Well, one point that's really important with these fish, especially these bigger barbel that fight really hard, is to let them rest a little bit in the margins before you let them go. The water is very cold, I can promise you my hands are very cold, but still, even in the cooler weather, make sure they've got all their strength back before you release them back in the river. And I've waded out here to get him into the river a little bit further. He's rested for about 5 minutes and he's more than happy. Well, I haven't had any more bites since that lovely £10 4 barbel, and I think that's going to be a really nice fish to end on for me. So we're probably going to stop the filming now. I'd be lying if I said I aren't going to give it probably about another half an hour, 45 minutes myself. But after yesterday, getting absolutely soaked through and walking through all that mud, we're quite keen to get away before the rain comes back. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to give it a like if you did, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of my videos in the future. And one last thing, we're now coming into the winter time, one of my favourite times of year, especially with the predator fishing. So if there's anything you want to see me fish for on my specimen series this winter, drop it in the comments below.